March 15th marks the International Day Against Police Brutality. It began 15 years ago in Montreal as an expression of rage after Montrealers were shot dead by police. Now it takes place in cities around the world. Also on March 15th in Montreal, a McGill University conference will hold a panel called Protests and Conflict, Who's to Blame? One speaker on the panel is activist Alex Hundert. He is one of the lead community organizers arrested and charged for planning protests against the Toronto G20 summit 2 years ago. Arriving at Hundert's home in Toronto, he's on the phone with his lawyer. When he hangs up, we sit on his back patio. He describes his own experiences with police over the last couple years.
By the time that we got within a couple weeks of the G20, I was being surveilled 24 hours a day by full surveillance teams of 6 to 8 cops at a time, at least one vehicle at a time following me around. We did a press conference earlier in the month talking about police intimidation and harassment. Then that night I got pulled over and had some trumped up charges thrown at me, and they gave me a fingerprinting date, June 25th.
When Hundert showed up in Guelph for fingerprinting on June 25th, police told him it was an error. They sent him packing. He wasn't completely prepared for what came next.
And then much later that night, basically a SWAT team kicked in my door, guns pointed.
The police have kept a watchful eye over Hundert since then. After sitting on a political panel, Hundert was thrown in jail once again. The Crown and police also tried to stop him from expressing political views to the media and on his blog. Now he says police continue to intimidate and harass him.
There was actually an undercover police officer, the man formerly known as Khalid Mohammed, now known to be actually Bindo Showan. In the weeks leading up to the G20, I had a tremendous amount of contact with the undercover cops who had gotten into SOAR.
SOAR is the Southern Anarchist Resistance. The group organized political actions against the G20 in Toronto in 2010. Hundert says many other groups were infiltrated by more than a dozen agents across Canada. In 2010, Hundert was charged with 4 counts of conspiracy and 2 counts of counselling. Last November, Hundert and Mandy Hiscox pled guilty to 1 count of counsel to commit mischief and counsel to obstruct police. 4 of his co-accused also pled guilty to counsel to commit mischief over $5,000.
I was part of this big global plea deal in which 11 people had their charges dropped, and 6 of us had to plead guilty to various offenses. All of the conspiracy charges were dropped, which was really important because we didn't want to set a negative precedent around conspiracy.
Those conspiracy charges stem from meetings that took place in 2010. The Crown alleges that activists attended strategy sessions where the possibility of property destruction was discussed. That, the Crown says, was a conspiracy. Hundert disagrees.
Conspiracy law is very vague and untested, especially against activists. And that's part of why they throw it at people, is because it is the type of charge that, because of how long it's going to take and how difficult it is to fight and how little certainty there is, people are likely to plea out. I mean, it's the built-in uncertainty and delay of the criminal justice system. And I'm aware of the type of system we're in. To have political agendas determine the outcome of criminal court cases is what I expect.
So what then motivated Hundert to accept the plea bargain?
11 people really wanted to have their charges dropped, and of the 6 people who had to plead guilty, the majority thought that that was a good idea, and so I went along with it. And I am awaiting my sentencing hearing, but we have a joint agreement on sentencing, which is 20 months minus time served, which means I will likely serve 9 months, starting sometime this spring. Both of the things I pled guilty to are things that are done for every mass mobilization. They are activist tools that the state is seeking to criminalize. And, granted, we didn't go through a trial, so whether or not a jury or a judge would actually say these things are illegal is as of yet untested, and that is one of the things we lost by pleading to these.
Although he pled guilty, Hundert is still under fairly strict bail conditions. He must live in his father's house under curfew, He can't use a mobile phone, and he must keep the peace and be on good behavior.
So one of the things was I pled guilty to having created the target list, which was a compiled list of publicly available information of major corporate and government sites in the city that were connected to either the G20 or the austerity agenda ostensibly. So corporate outlets, government offices, police stations, and I compiled that list. And then the other one was an advanced direct action workshop called Direct Action for Mass Mobilizations. And a section of that workshop included discussion around de-arresting, how to protect yourself from the police in a mass mobilization. What is suggested makes that illegal is I did not explicitly say that you should only defend yourself against police if you are certain an arrest is unlawful. Teaching people how to break any laws may then be considered criminal. So even the preparation for mass civil disobedience, like just going limp, is technically mischief. And so if you're teaching people how to do that, are you guilty of counsel to commit mischief? What makes it worth taking the types of risks to do the type of organizing we do sometimes is its impact. To me, the process of building a campaign around that trial was a phenomenal opportunity to do some of that movement building, and I regret having lost that opportunity. You know, in as much as it was plausible we would have been convicted, I also think it was very plausible we would have beaten all the charges.
Hundert says the main way to keep busy in prison is through reading and writing, but what will he write about?
We'll probably do a bit of what Mandy's been doing, which is writing on the inside about jail and about other things. You know, one of the things I've wanted to do for years and years and years is every week pick one story in the newspaper and just tear it apart because of how stupid and preposterous it is. Jail will give me that opportunity.
For Open File, I'm Carmel Wolfson.